Let's work. Yo, it's go time, showtime, never backing down time. One shot, yo, make it count, yo. Crunch time, shine time, make this moment my time. Get a grip, yo, ready, set, go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go. Yeah, it's my time, your time. Step into the spotlight. Get lit, yo. Let yourself go. Our time, high time. Gotta go big time. This is it, yo. Never take no fight time. Grind time. Take it to the street time. Turn the roof off. Get loco. Game time, win time. We gon' bring it home time. No regrets now. Let it all go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder.
Good evening, and welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Big Bear. Over there's Little Cub. How are you, honey?
Well, that's a different intro.
Well, I
but
can't
yeah,
always come up with stuff off the top of my head.
I know, but that was different. But anyway, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, really. Oh, yay.
Oh.
It's Friday.
It is. It has been a Friday.
It has.
Yes.
Like, after, this was a pretty intense week.
It has been. It's been a really intense week. It's been a really intense news week. Now, did you see the story in the break room?
I may have missed that. Sorry, guys. I do try to catch everything, but...
All right. I'll be passing it to you.
I'm getting there. Come on. Oh, I did see that.
How?
Yeah. It definitely sounds... I don't think anyone reading this should, or experiencing it, like, if you show up at this crime scene, there is no way you end up thinking that this woman died of, unsuspiciously.
Yeah,
like
unsuspiciously.
It's a very, that's a very pointed form of suicide. And that's one that's usually done away from public areas.
Right.
Because one, as a form of suicide, hanging is one you typically do at home. Or like in a hotel. Suicide in and of itself is something you go off to do. Sort of like you talk about, animals will realize when it's their time and will run away. And I'm not trying to necessarily draw connections there. I'm just saying it's in the same kind of mindset.
Right.
Is that, you typically don't want to do this where, like, any child walking past is going to see you.
Right.
You don't want to do this in places where, any large number of people are going to be exposed to this.
Right.
Then you go into the history of this form of, racially, that, any black person hanging from a tree has an obvious racial component. You just can't deny that.
You can't. And then 72 years old.
That gets more into the
72-year-olds that can tie a noose, throw it over a tree, arch it up. No.
Well, I mean, even without going into that, even if we assume she was fully capable of doing it,
right?
That's not. Yeah. Yeah. Because it looks like the crime scene is literally in front of her house.
Right.
Or in front of a house.
Right.
Whether that's her house or someone else's. That's just not. Like, that's the commonalities in suicide, period.
Right.
Let alone suicide by hanging. Is that, no, this doesn't track.
Yeah.
Like, this would be a very awkward suicide.
Yeah. It's not a normal, it would not be a standard, it would not be a, and Carl Snowdon says, tick tock. Apache police officers just took down a deceased body of an African-American woman. The unidentified woman was found hanging from a tree in the Apache Community Walk.
Annapolis
Walk Community.
Yeah. There's no.
No. There has to be some more here. I want to hear more.
I mean, because even when you have, now granted, there's a lot of hot contested debate over whether suicidal ideation is inherently a sign of mental health issue to begin with. But even in that situation, there's so many commonalities among suicide, even by people who are severely mentally disturbed or acutely mentally disturbed. Like, right. This just isn't what you do.
Right.
And additionally, this isn't a common form of suicide for most women.
Right.
I mean, it just isn't. Like, this is a more masculine form of suicide.
Right.
If it were. And that's just how the breakdowns is that the number of people, by gender is way lower.
Right.
And generally not going to be, like, the only way I could see this is there's going to have to be a backstory from hell.
Right.
As in, like, she was about to lose this house because of, a really shady, bank deal.
Right.
I could then start kind of building, okay, this is more.
Right.
Like, this is someone who got pushed into a corner, was very emotionally distraught, and is sort of like Brenda's saying, it would be more of a statement location than a suicide location.
Exactly.
As in, this is a suicide, but only in name.
Right.
Like, that's what she did in that situation, but that's not what she did.
Yeah, that's not what
yeah.
Okay. I'm going to sound really sexist right now, but it's facts. Women who commit suicide normally do it by medication, by bridges, by anything that doesn't make a mess and isn't difficult to clean up. Putting their head in an oven.
Well, and yeah, statistically, female suicide is not messy.
Right.
And is typically quiet.
Right.
Peaceful. Slow in many cases, like suicide by car, suicide by, right. As in, these are things that you go more peacefully.
Right.
Versus, hanging, which is very quick and it is also very traumatic. Gunshot, always messy and traumatic. And not a guarantee. Pills are more common.
Right.
Women typically gravitate towards overdose.
Right.
Though a fair number of men do as well. That one's not exactly a 100 split. Right. So, yeah, it's just, again, I could see, I could only see this as a suicide by statement,
Right.
or statement by suicide. Probably the better wording for that one. I would need a backstory from Hal.
Right.
To then see how did she get here versus just thinking this was, oh, my life's so bad, I'm making an impulsive choice to go out into my, front yard and hang myself from a tree.
Right. On a walking path.
On a walking path. Like, that doesn't really, it just doesn't strike right. That either sounds like some serious foul play, which would make more sense, and there's going to be a racial motive. Like, there's no way around that one. If it is not, if it's murder,
right?
But if it's statement by suicide, then this is definitely, there's going to be a backstory, and it's going to be horrible,
right?
And it will probably be one of those that makes perfect sense. That it would have to be multiple layers of things happening to this woman in which she has been taken advantage of due to her race. That, like, that's the only place you can go to with that has led to her to make this statement.
Right.
But yeah, that was really quick for them to say, no foul play.
Right.
Yeah, no, sorry. I don't know where these officers got their training. Apparently a box of Cracker Jacks to get there from here. Just location alone.
Right. Looking at the Who database, and I will share this into the break room. It is more likely that this is something way more than suicide by statement.
I'm most definitely.
Okay. It is more likely because it is more likely for a woman in Asia to commit suicide by medicational poisoning or pesticide poisoning. There's more poison, and then vehicle are the two main ways. Handguns and hanging are below the list for women.
And it's not sexist. It's literally just how it works out. It's been a thing. That oddly enough, there is statistical correlation between gender and method.
Right.
And then, yeah, Brenda points out as well that age-wise, it's usually younger people. That can be true, but then when you get into male death by hanging, it gets a little dicey.
Right.
Because you can also see that span all age ranges.
Right.
Because I don't necessarily... in and of itself, I think her age does not necessarily preclude ability to form a noose and hoist. And the reason I say that is because there are a fair number of men who do not commit suicide, but die by autoerotic asphyxiation that are very much in her age group.
Right.
Like, it happens. And that's one of those, it gets a little dicey there because functionally it was a suicide.
Right.
Functionally. But it wasn't the intent of the act. The act was sexual gratification that got out of hand.
Right.
So there's a fair number of men in her age group and older that have a sexual proclivity for that tie nooses and do this all the time. I don't inherently think just because someone's 72 they can't do it. I think it's a little weird. And again, it's not like she was found in a front closet.
Right. She was found in a yard. Like,
that's where we're at there, is if, this had been someone who was an African American female, 72, found dead in her home,
Mm-hmm.
in an attic, over a banister, whatever. I would go, okay, that I could see if there's a note and everything else. This probably
Right.
could go either way. Either it's a murder or it's a suicide. It could be either one. But when you start adding in the facts, unless it's some horrible statement in terms of her life,
Mm-hmm.
then I can't see this as anything other than a racially motivated murder.
Right. And I'm looking at a Reddit thread for Maryland, and apparently it's being reported that children found her on the way to school.
Yeah, and I'm going, statistically that doesn't work. She would
Right.
have known that.
Right.
And literally, and I'm not trying to get into gender stereotypes and just be like the world's a total binary. But statistically speaking, most people of any gender who commit suicide usually have a fear of being discovered by children, not adults.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Right.
Generally, that's also a higher present thought for women, is the effect that this would have on a child that would discover them, knowing that this is right in a school path, that they're going to be like the most likely person to find her is going to be a child. It still didn't track. I'm like, this is very weird.
Yeah. This is highly weird. And Reddit's even taking it deeper, because apparently there's some locals that are cross-sharing some information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to double check that and see exactly. Oh, my Google's going to be screwed for a while. Like, you ever type a search and go, oh, I'm going to have the weirdest flipping search results for the or like ads and everything else. Oh, you just start typing a search and go, oh, this is going to be bad. Let's see. Yeah. See, here's the problem. And I'll say this, and I say it as a problem. It's not really a problem. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Right. It really is. But when you're trying to find statistics about this topic, that's not what you get. That takes a while to get to. So I'm just going to stop where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because most of what I'm getting is like pretty much geared towards, are you thinking about committing?
Yeah, I'm like, sure. Like, we need to make sure Marcia doesn't get a phone call from Google.
I know.
Who just attempted to answer itself. How interesting.
Yeah, really. Well, you know.
Okay, guys. Yes, we have to make a little light of the situation. There are some Google things going on with Aeson.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Mary goes, weird. I remember when my daughter acknowledged this method of sex practice circa 2007. Good evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's more than likely not what this was.
Right.
At all. But I mean, I'm just sitting here trying to run through I'm trying to put myself at the scene mentally, at least, and figure out, how do you get there from here? Like, you're an officer, you're standing at the scene, you're looking at everything. How do you get there from here? And I just can't do it.
Right.
Because I'm running base like thoughts, like who discovered like, one, this is in front of a house, outdoors, on a walking path. Who discovered the victim? Children. Okay. None of this adds.
Right.
None of it adds.
Right.
Like, it's like none of this makes sense. Like, this isn't the most probable answer is, oh, it was a suicide.
Well, it's one of those.
How do you get there from here?
Exactly.
And yeah, I feel really bad for those kids.
Yeah. Like, I hope that their parents get them counseling immediately. Especially, and it's going to sound bad, if this is an ethnic community, there are weighing and weighing and weighing.
Actually, Brenda, I'd say quite the opposite. I think this is the fastest way to make sure that the story bubbles up. Like, seriously, I think if they had reported it as suspicious, the story would have died out in a couple of days. And quite frankly, if you look at statistics for African American death by murder, the story would have been dead in, like, it may not even made the news.
Right.
And I'm talking statistically. This is what happens all the time. Pretty white women with blonde hair make newspaper covers, like their front page news. The news media cannot get enough of a blonde white bitch that's gone missing, dead, whatever. Cannot get enough of it. Simple story on a 72-year-old black woman found hanging from a tree. Suspicions of a racially based murder. It doesn't even qualify for page 3. Like, you're so far back, that's a B section item somewhere in the middle. Like, I'm just saying, statistically, that's where the story ends up. Is all I mean. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. The fact that they rush to call this, no foul play, that's what's becoming the interest point, is that it almost flips it on its head. And it's like, how is this not? Like, it just smacks in the head and says, how is it not? Like,
yeah.
But
in other news,
okay,
Brittany,
are we gonna go with Mary's bring up and be like, speaking of blonde white bitches?
Well, honey, speaking of slavery,
well, that's the worst segue ever. Okay, take it away.
Brittany's conservatorship has ended. I am just getting details in. Gotta remember, this happened over 4 hours ago, but we're waiting. I only go with reputable sources. Granted, I like Brittany's Law Army. Apparently, they were not allowed to leave the courtroom. Like, once you're in, you're in. Once you're out, you're out.
Okay. Well, that's a choice.
Yeah.
Oh, so what happened? So she's free, is what it sounds like.
The judge has released the conservator, has closed the conservatorship.
Awesome. So so what is happening from here? So she's no longer under the conservatorship.
Right. So she's her own person as of today.
Great.
She has a team put into place. They are now starting to look back into the conservatorship. Back into what, where, how, when, whom, done what, for what reasons. I sense lawsuits and possibly some criminal charges being filed here.
I just have a question why they've. Well, I have many questions. I guess the first one is how fast do you think Jamie Spears is going to be on a plane?
Well, I
Preferably
want to
to
know
a
how
country with
fast
no
will he get these
expedition.
bracelets.
Well, that too. But I mean, because I don't think there's any way anyone's going to go back through that conservatorship and not find issues.
Right.
I'm just wondering how fast he's on a plane.
Right.
That if right now they couldn't immediately leverage charges,
Right.
how fast is he going to be on a plane? Because, quite frankly,
Right.
oh yeah.
Now, this is what I find highly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows Vivian Thorne, Jamie Spears' lawyer for the conservatorship, made a statement in court. Conservatees successfully terminate. She had never seen a conservatee successfully terminate a conservatorship. That's scary. That is scary.
Well, yeah. And I think that statement alone tells you the problem with the situation or the severity of a situation necessary
Right.
for a conservatorship in the first place.
Right.
That fundamentally this is meant for people that could never have the capacity
Mm-hmm.
to manage their own finances. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Right. Well, not only that, but why was the big question at this point is why was she even put into the conservatorship?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big question to go backwards and see what formed it, how it happened, who did what.
Right.
To get it started. And I think it may almost be something that ends up with some charges far outside of the lawyer and Mr. Spears.
Yeah.
Far outside that.
Right.
Because I just either there's a giant loophole.
Yeah.
That you could drive a bus through.
Right.
That's putting people into conservatorships or could potentially put people into conservatorships that don't belong there.
Right.
Or someone had to have done something.
Right.
And very seriously misrepresented the whole situation.
Right. And what I found alarming was Brittany wasn't even informed of the conservatorship being placed on her.
And if I remember right, wasn't it started while she was in a rehab facility?
It was started while she was on a 5150 in a rehab facility.
Okay. Yeah, that's sounding like either there's some loose terms and conditions to start one in that area, or someone really grossly misrepresented the situation.
Yeah, because she wasn't allowed a lawyer in the first year of any. She wasn't served the petition. She wasn't allowed to defend the petition. I mean, literally, it's the equate to that I could bring into real perspective is you taking the deed to the house over and having it put in your name.
Well, not even necessarily that. It's that what fundamentally should have started and ran as, a psychiatric hold. Which, okay, understandable. There can be reasons.
Right.
Get someone in for evaluation and treatment, and see where we go from there.
Right.
Then you might get into a court situation in which you should be pursuing as a legal, the right to be a legal guardian for her.
Right.
That, look, she is incapable.
Right.
Or she resumes her normal life, and you may not like how she spends her money, what she spends her money on, how fast she spends her money, or that she doesn't give you any.
Mm-hmm.
But those are her choices.
Right.
Because did you not catch the last part of it's her money?
Right.
End of the day, it's her money.
Right.
There is nothing literally in the law that will inherently make it illegal or necessarily signs of dementia to be bad with money.
Right.
Or of any mental disease, defect, etc. You can just be bad with money.
Right.
Like, you're allowed. And that's a challenge a lot of children of elderly parents really struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Is understanding this concept that as long as this person understands what money is,
Mm-hmm.
and they understand the action they're taking, and they understand what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they can remember and recall later what they did and why,
Mm-hmm.
they can spend whatever they want to spend however they choose to spend it.
Right. But this conservatorship was so locked up, Jamie Spears told her what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, what to drink, how much to drink, when to work, when not to work, if to work, if allowed to work, allowed to leave her home, not allowed to leave her home, what she could wear, what she couldn't wear.
Mm-hmm. No. I'm believe me, I get that. There were a lot of issues with this conservatorship.
Right.
But the fact it existed at all,
Right.
that's where I already have issues. Is it looks like there was at least what the state would call a qualifying event.
Right.
As in, she's under mental health. How it got to actual formation is where I'm just unclear. Is that fundamentally, as long as she could, at the end of that hold,
Mm-hmm.
was capable of understanding money, performing simple arithmetic, math concepts,
Mm-hmm.
and could demonstrate recall of choices,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
But by the end of that hold, she was in place in the conservatorship.
Right. And I'm saying one that was way too quick.
Right. And what they based it on was she locked herself and her children in a bathroom in a Subway restaurant and wouldn't come out because the paparazzi was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, it's not unreasonable. On another hand, it can seem unreasonable.
Right.
Like, if you're not Britney Spears, it sounds like you're crazy. But when you're Britney Spears, and there actually is paparazzi, and there actually is, a situation.
Right.
Okay, then that's different.
Right.
Well, I know there was a motive for greed, and I don't have any question as to why someone wanted the conservatorship.
Mm-hmm.
What I can't understand is either, because I can only see it one of two ways, is either there was a very severe misrepresentation of her situation to get her through this process, or the process was so riddled with holes that you could have, like anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone could end up in this conservatorship situation, and that should be very scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means there's no real good delineation to indicate who should be and who should most definitely not be in a conservatorship. That's where I'm at. No, I understand why someone wanted it. I understand, what occurred. I understand the severity of it.
Right.
I'm just sitting here going, either the process is so, literally riddled with loopholes and, loose, requirements that you could put anyone in it.
Yeah.
All you have to do is have a willingness to do so, and boom, conservatorship. Just add water. Or someone had to horribly misrepresent her situation, the situation, and grossly exaggerate the severity of her issues.
And gaslight her enough.
Well, not even her, just the court.
Right.
Someone had to go to court. It's not uncommon for people that are being put under a conservatorship to be unable to attend.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're sitting there and you're in this courtroom, like the things you would have had to have declared, I'm presuming under oath, to make all this happen. Like, again, it's either the requirements are so loose that you could do it to anyone. All you have to do is show up and say this, and technically that's a legal statement, and it's not an exaggeration, which is really bad. Or someone had to go in and lie their ass off.
Right.
Like, that's the only two ways I can see this working.
Right.
Just to get to the point of it exists.
Right.
Everything after that is a total nightmare, but theoretically could be very much construed, granted abusively done, but part of the conservatorship itself.
Right.
It's just, unfortunately, what I could see different aspects of that being part of a conservatorship.
Right.
In which functionally, yeah, you get kind of full control over another human being and how they live their life. The general theory being is that other person has no ability whatsoever to do that for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's like, huh? Speaking of, you've got a story. I'm like, yeah, you already seen some of the latest court filings.
Yeah, this one's fun. Are you going to transition us at all tonight?
Oh, crap. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to have fun later, y'all.
You going to have fun. Alrighty. You shall not pinch to Zoom. So I honestly, I don't even really want to get into the Rittenhouse trial itself. Like the actual, like, we already know that's screwed up hot mess. But this ruling, and the whole situation is enough to mentally drive me crazy. I can't even imagine being a prosecutor. So the prosecutor very simply in this case wanted to use an iPad and embiggen a little bit of video to show to the defendant.
Right.
This turned into a complete nightmare in which the defense is alleging, on no basis, that doing so would cause Apple and some software in its programming on the iPad to interpret the image and insert additional data altering the image if this were done. My brain wants to explode on this one. But you point out there are some issues in Wisconsin.
Well, there's issues in Wisconsin. There's issues in other court areas. That is insane.
Yeah. Well, so let's wrap up my thoughts and theories here. I'm horrified that basic technology is so absolutely beyond the grasp of so many in the legal profession.
Right.
And that effectively they are functioning at best in many cases like it is 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And they are walking around with no clue.
Mm-hmm.
No clue.
Right.
Within a standard ability to have a reasonable debate or discussion regarding technology.
Right.
That you can't even use an iPad to enlarge something without setting off motions and calls for an expert witness, that doing such does not alter the image.
Right.
It kills me. It kills me that this is where we are.
Right.
It just, brain explosion right there. So, yeah.
Yeah, so they're going to bring in an expert from Apple to explain that artifacts are not added to the video when you pinch into Zoom.
Right. Well, or moreover, that additional information is not inserted. That effectively, what I think, if I had to assume,
right,
someone is misunderstanding the words interpolation.
Right.
And what that does.
Right.
And what it can be. Which is, when you do enlarge an image, there is going to be a moment where the finer borders,
right,
you do have to make a decision in software,
right,
as to what something is or isn't based on its next neighbor,
right.
And that is a color value averaging. It's not going to put a gun in your hand.
Right.
It's not going to change the position of the gun.
Right.
It's not going to insert a smiley face. It's not going to take anything that isn't already there and just figure out across this span where the border is.
Right.
That's it. That's all literally all we're talking about. It's not going to create anything new and exciting. Like, you can't get totally different data.
Right.
By doing that. But you are pointing out that there were issues regarding whether a printed email versus the actual electronic message.
Give me a second to bring up the dialing. Luckily, I love Twitter for some things.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I've made a giant mess on my desk.
That happens.
Yeah, so that was fun. But no, I just, like, it just kills me that this is where we are. That, and the fact, I think I would be less traumatized if, like, this is not a new feature. It's not a new feature. It's not a new idea.
Right.
It's not a new thing. The fact that it is in this case and is allowing for one of the most awkward defenses ever.
Right.
Of, well, I can't see.
Right.
I can't tell. It's not clear. Which is basically where this has been at. And hence the desire to do that. But the fact that I don't know. Mentally, it just explodes my brain to the point of I'm not even really all that functional.
No, it was the definition of a document. They have to specify what a document is. They have to specify what a iPad is, what a smartphone is, what a HP computer is. And this is in the Duggar case. I'm also following that case because it's just one of my little trolling things.
Well, and here's my thing: to me, it's so in the weeds.
Right.
It's just so out there. It's like at this point, like you could derail this whole case over some of the simplest things on planet flippin' Earth.
Right.
And turn some of these simplest things into a complete and total nightmare.
Right.
And drag this case so far out and screw with the jury so badly.
Right.
That I don't know anyone would care anymore.
Right.
As in, and I'm not just saying on this one issue, like I could understand the entire jury being like, well, that's the magical thing we walk out the building with.
Right.
But as in, if they're going to sit there and argue over something so basic.
Right. Well, and the judge even
I could
said
see this
he
almost
does not have or own a smartphone. He does not know what an iPad is. He is unfamiliar with the abilities of a computer. This judge needs to retire. If he doesn't know how to make a phone call on a smartphone, if none of his court documents is able to be submitted by email, because they may be changed in the transmission, was the ruling. There is video evidence of this man shooting 3 people that has not been allowed into evidence because the judge doesn't understand if they have been changed or not.
Yeah. Well, and that was the whole thing, is my brain is exploding.
Right.
Is no. Short version, no. But I'm just sitting here going, does the state... That's got to be a moment as a prosecutor.
Right.
I mean, as a defendant, you could potentially sit there and argue the merit of spending the money to muddy the waters this much.
Right.
And whether or not an expert would help you.
Right.
I just can't imagine it on the prosecutorial side of sitting here going, do I have to get an expert from Apple?
Yes.
To fly into Wisconsin?
Yes.
To testify under oath about the functionality under discussion. And then how far out of bounds is this going to get?
Right.
You know, is it like, if he doesn't understand Zoom and he doesn't understand email and he doesn't understand.
Right.
As I understand it, there's some other applications involved here.
Right.
Like this wasn't all, like this isn't it. There's more.
Right.
And that this conversation is going to be near impossible for him to follow. That if, like, for instance, conversation turns to Snapchat or WhatsApp and Messenger and blah, blah, blah.
He has no clue what
this
they are.
Judge is sitting here going, what's a Mahoozit?
Yeah.
Like, what does it do? How does it work? What occurs? You know, like, my God. You know, I think you could get a kindergartner through a, you know, thesis defense with less effort.
Well, and see, here's the problem. This man is going to walk free. For those that don't remember, this is the teenager who was out past curfew and killed 4 people with an assault rifle during the Black Lives Matter march. He will get out, and he will probably get...
Yeah, we're definitely I think there are a number of jurists that need to reconsider their careers.
Right.
And I don't do that with a lot of malice. I'm just sitting here going, where do you start?
Well, no, it's not even the juries doesn't even get to consider the evidence that he has now not allowed.
Right. Well, and when I use the word jurist, I'm talking about the judge.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of judges
Uh-huh.
that should reconsider careers.
Yes.
As in, is now a good time to retire? Is now a good time? Because foundationally we have a problem, and we face this politically as well. And our political representatives who are no better than this judge.
Right.
That are not understanding.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be ageist. I have met many wonderful people with of many years more than my age that have far better comprehension,
right,
than this judge will ever have. It's not just age.
Right.
It's the unwillingness to get with it.
Right.
Take the time, learn some things, move beyond your nice little mahogany bubble of, paper and secretaries and assistants and typewriters. And I'm sorry, there's a whole world that moved beyond this. And you're in it, and you're trying a case in it. And if you can't understand the basic conceptual ideas of the reality we live in, how can you possibly begin to grasp and comprehend enough of what happened to have any role in this?
Right.
Is where I'm at. I don't follow.
Right.
I'm just trying to, I just can't follow.
Right. Now listen to this. Judge Singer, I'm not going to accept the accuracy of what Richard is saying, and I'm not going to accept what you're telling me. I said if you can offer somebody who is knowledgeable of these areas, I think you should be allowed to use the image. This is high risk to me if you insert more data into the area of space. Well, you're wiggling your finger head. No. Tell me where I'm wrong. Burton, there is no proof in this record that we're doing that, Your Honor. I didn't say there was proof of it. I said you have the burden of proof. You're the one prompting for the exhibit. You need to tell me that it's reliable. The exhibit is already in evidence, Your Honor. Berger. Judge, I know that. Richards, the enhancement exhibit is not in evidence. Berger, this is not an enhancement. Judge Sharler, then why show it? The reason you're showing it is because it enhances the image, right? Berger, pointing out the defendant had taken the video and photos and cropped them and zoomed them in to make the exhibit for this trial. We have guys coming in yesterday with Walgreen prints. This is what is done with photographs all the time. These enlargements are done in the labs. It doesn't change the pixels, Berger says. Judge, no pinching without expert testimony.
Yep. That's where I'm at. It's it's right there. It's such low-hanging fruit.
Right.
He's you got to be able to smell the apple core. Just it's right here, man. Right. It's not that hard.
Right.
Yeah, it is a jury trial.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm just sitting here going, there's so many outs on this. And then the testimony as it turned into, which was, I can't see, I can't tell, I can't, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying, Mary, is it's right there. These are analogs to each other. Welcome back to your SAT days. These are analogies. It's the same thing. This is to this, what this is to this. And what the judge is sitting here saying is, I understand that this is to this. I'm not accepting that this is to this.
Right. And what this
And that they
video
are the same to
showed,
each other.
right? And they even brought in a 4K TV, bigger than the one we have in our living room, and said, "Do you see what you're doing there? You're pointing the gun at people."
Oh, no, I
No, I
can't
can't
tell.
see it.
Yeah.
Turns it to the judge. Oh, well, that's an enhanced 4K image. Let's disavow the 4K image. Show him the original. That's the stupidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is why Rittenhouse, who is on film shooting people to death, will get off on this trial.
Yeah. Is because we're arguing about whether an enlargement digitally occurring on a phone or an iPad or any other device is the same as having a print and using a magnifying glass on it.
The same judge that ruled that Rittenhouse's video that he posted online telling the people what he was going to go do would not be entered into evidence because it wasn't secured.
Yeah, that there was no proof of for chain of custody.
Yeah, because it was stored
And
on
it's
social
still
media.
Yeah, it's still, it's like that's not how that works. I mean, it's an interesting legal argument, and I'm sure there could be a future case in which something could be done, but I would still think that you would be able to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you pull down the video, you have a video expert review the video, looking for any signs of tampering with the video. You should pretty much clear that hurdle. You know, I again, like, these things are like creating a seamless fake,
Right?
is very hard. It always has been, and it probably always will be. Because there are just some things that when recording video and audio, you can very quickly realize something's not right. Something isn't right. Something is not happening the way it should happen.
Right.
Or it's too clean, or it's too dirty, or the shadow is wrong.
Right.
All of those are things. But we're just talking about video that was either streamed or directly posted.
Right.
That he shot of himself.
Right.
That went online. That's pretty open and shut.
Right.
But that's disallowed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I say this as a judge. A, too old to lay on the bench, and B, already made a decision on the trial, so he's trying to make it all right. Trying to make it happen.
I think, well, even if you take out the secondary idea that he's already, you know, prejudged the defendant and is steering the trial towards an outcome, that this is a very biased trial.
Right.
Even if you pull that part out,
right,
the arguments are so crap.
Right.
Like, I just can't see this standing up to an appeal.
Right.
But then again, I think that's the finer point of this, isn't it? Is because there is an opportunity there that the charges can be dismissed with prejudice. In which case, there's neither anything to appeal nor the door to bring it back in.
Well, because of double jeopardy, what he's trying to make happen here and what will occur here is he will be cited and he'll walk free, and they'll never be able to bring charges against him for the 4 lives he took. Toting a gun on one of America's streets at all.
No.
He'll be proven innocent because the jury can only consider the facts presented to them. Nothing from news media, nothing from anywhere else. When you're a juror, you have to, and the facts being presented are being very limited by the judge.
Yeah. And this level of limitation is very, very strong.
Yeah.
Well, and it even begs the question, though, if how well the game of sleight of hand may work in this situation, though, wouldn't it? Because if you're sitting in that jury and you're looking at the screen, I think I would struggle at this point.
Right.
I mean, I could see the defendant's unwillingness to go along. But I would still think I would be able to sit there and look at that and figure out what I take it as.
Right.
I mean, because video, even if you are a tiny little dot on the screen, that's really hard to sit there and argue against.
Right.
And even if it's grainy, even if it's unclear.
Right. But see, what the bigger factor is and the bigger problem here is the judge is just not even letting them hear the evidence. Like the video of him confessing of his crimes and his premeditation, jury will never hear that.
But yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't thrown out the prints yet. The photographic prints.
Right. He'll probably instruct the jury against considering those as evidence.
Well, because fundamentally, you're dealing with a digital file. You never have film. There is no, as in you don't get a negative.
Right.
That's been chemically developed and no.
Right.
All of those prints are based on a digital file that has to be transmitted, saved, opened, and basically if you're dealing with any photo processor that works with digital prints, they've also been altered.
Right.
As in you want to talk about enhancements, you should see what occurs. Because there are some things that photo printers do to ensure the best quality prints.
Right.
And some of that is with rebalancing an image so that it prints more realistically and more in balance. Right. Like those are pretty well calibrated to like strip out different colors, change saturation, increase light, trying to rebalance a photo to get you the best quality print.
Right.
So there actually is alteration just taking a digital photo and sending it to your nearest Walgreens.
Right.
I'm surprised this judge isn't going to argue that. Or more importantly, I wouldn't be surprised if the defense tries to bring it up.
Yeah. And they
at which point, what evidence? Well, which becomes and at what point do you have any evidence remaining based under this impossible hurdle?
Right.
Of proving that all these different processes that we all take for granted and are fundamentally, yes, may alter like the final product, but don't actually alter the content.
Right.
In any meaningful way. Like, Walgreens doesn't slap a gun in your hand and point it at people when you go to develop or get photo prints done of a digital image any more than they would do that with 35 millimeter film. Right. But they do alter that photo.
Right.
They will change drastically in some cases that photo. But if you go all the way back to 35 millimeter film and some of those early systems, they were already doing that.
Right.
They were already doing that on film print and altering those photos to get the best possible quality.
Right.
So you may, or like your mileage would vary unless you were doing your own developing at home. Your images were being enhanced.
Right. Well, it's like the Britney case. They literally had to say a scrap of notebook paper that you may have made notes on during the meeting. Emails, text messages, devices, smartphones, Apple, Android, systems maintained by this, system maintained by that. I mean, they have to spell out every little detail. And this is in California, which tends to be one of our more progressive jurisdictions. Wyoming, however, is not.
Well, Wisconsin, isn't it?
Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a mess. And to some degree, I understand a lot of the persnickety nature of it. Is unless you're being asked for evidence directly, it's not really in your best interest to go looking for evidence for the other side. Right. And that's like, you do have a duty if you know there's evidence to turn it over. Though granted, I think that only works from the prosecution to the defense, not the other way around, doesn't it?
Right.
If I understand correctly, like, you don't have any requirement as the defense to prove your client's guilt.
Right.
But the prosecution has a requirement to turn over anything that may prove their innocence.
Right.
So, yeah. Talk about a weird standard there. But yeah, no, like, you wouldn't, like, if you're being asked to turn over documents, you're being asked to turn over information, then yeah, you want that very much spelled out, because you may very much know that there's like this document over here that would very much be damning.
Right.
But none of these documents are.
Right.
And do you want to go outside the scope of what they ask for?
Right. Well, and it's like, everyone knows what an iPhone is. Unfortunately, if an iPhone's brought into court, Apple has to certify that it's an iPhone. If an HP computer laptop is being brought in, HP has to certify that it's an HP laptop. It has to be sent to HP. HP has to certify that it is a full laptop, that is when it was produced, all this.
Yeah. Hoy. The insanity.
Yeah. The insanity of
because
our
that's
judicial system.
Well, yeah, and then I'm sure I've run into a couple of machines over the years that I bet companies would have fun with them. Yeah. And like, how do you, what would you even begin to certify this as? Because it's one case, it's components from multiple systems. Like, technically, it would get interesting if, in some horrible twist of life, I and my computer ended up in the same courtroom. Because I am the original equipment manufacturer.
Right, but every part of it has to be certified by its manufacturer.
Oh, they're going to have fun.
Yeah, I know. All right, so moving on. PC World article, reading, writing, and online bots. School reopening systemizes teens resell gig.
All right, you undo your swipe so you don't have to fight so hard?
Yeah.
I'm just going to like traumatizing you a bit. All right, so reading, writing, and online bots. School reopening stymie teens reseller gigs. All righty, so this is a fun one. So if you've been wondering what teenagers were doing all of 2020 and a good chunk of 2021, sitting at home, supposedly in class. They were actually making money. They were making a lot of money. Through automated bots and websites that sell different, products, and the ability to go in on deals, clearances, price drops, and just inaccurate pricing. Buy up a lot of that product and resell it at a profit. Especially things that were like extremely popular consumer goods that had limited product drop onto a seller's website. So this is what's been happening with PS5s and graphics cards for a while now. So yeah, they're called online scalpers. And they very much, like, it is a very weird little passive income. Which is fundamentally what it is. These kids are getting together the money to do two things. They are, one, getting money together to rent the software that does this, and then having seed money to start buying things to resell. Now I'm sure for some they're starting with like a couple $100,
right?
Like just enough to buy something inexpensive, resell it at a markup, make more money, rinse, lather, repeat over and over and over again, until next thing you know, you're selling graphics cards, sneakers, and PlayStations.
Right.
Because realistically, if you can come up with a PS5 right now, or there's a number of graphics cards, if you can cough one up right now, people will pay you an insane amount of money. And we've always had that with sneakers.
Right.
Like that's been going on since the 90s.
Right.
There was always that kid. But this has actually become a thing that kids are doing during class time, which was easier when they were at home.
Right.
Not so easy when you're in the middle of an AP class.
Right.
Like, these aren't dumb kids, and a lot of them are saving up their money towards college education.
Right.
Like, that's what they plan to use this money for. Like, and we're talking about kids that are quoting one and direct quoting the article. Dylan may be young, but he's among the legion of online scalpers who spent the pandemic at home buying and reselling the tech world's most wanted products. I would say around 10 to 12, 500 average a month, he told PC Mag. Some months it would be exponentially higher, some would be lower. Like, that's how much money they're making.
Yeah.
Like, this is insane.
10 to
$12,500
per month. He's upset because his profit margin is down by 25%.
Yeah. Like these kids are sitting here calculating profit margins, which I think, like, let's just all applaud that.
Right.
Like, he's running a business, he's running the numbers, he understands the numbers.
Right.
Like, educationally, it's not a bad thing. It's kind of crazy what it's doing to the marketplace, but as many have said, if there weren't kids doing it for college educations, it'd be adults doing it for, hookers and blow. So, I mean...
Well, there's a lot of interesting chat going on also. Like, can someone grab this? I'm in school. Can someone do this? Can you get me 5 and I'll pay you 10%?
Like, these kids are really getting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is now it is ticking off a lot of adults. Yeah. That was the one thing I noticed in the comments is adults are pissed.
Yeah.
That this is what these kids are doing.
Right.
And like there's a lot of hate for the scalpers. And the fact that they're causing the products to the cost to go up. And I'm going,
Right.
where have you been for the last 50 years?
Right.
Like, I just want to know, how did you get to this age and you didn't think that's how the world works? Like, these kids aren't doing anything illegal.
Yeah, but
Not really. Not really.
right. But
Not really.
Dylan's been scalping since the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's taken a few years. It's not like just over the pandemic he went from like, I'm going to start with $200 and I'm now doing, ten to $12,500 a month. Like, this has taken a while to build up. But still, it's kind of crazy. Like, I don't think it's bad necessarily, and I don't think these kids are inherently making money that, yeah, they're driving up the cost of goods.
Well, I think one of our friends needs to be contacting him. Here's why. He was able to snap up a large number of desks for $0, and he sold them for a profit of $1,400. Wonder if he's got any more left in there.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, but no, and sorry, that's a side note. I have a client who is desperately trying to set up an office, and they are having the worst time with getting office furniture. It's hysterical at this point. And it's not necessarily because of any ordering problems. It's just been a whole thing. But no, I mean, yeah, there's glitches. There are things that these kids are exploiting.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I don't think we're necessarily talking about profits that are insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're doing what every middle person does.
Mm-hmm.
Is, I know when to buy. I know who wants to buy it from me.
Right.
I know how much they're willing to pay. I know how much it's being sold for and where to get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, honey,
I can move it from here to
wonder
here.
if you're in the wrong business.
Oh.
You have the knowledge of all this.
Why
is there not a bot and a credit card attached to your computer?
It would drive me crazy.
Okay.
Like, it would. I see a lot of people, and like, adults are being told to do this all the time. Side note, just in case you were like unaware. But there's this stuff all the time that, like, people do it with, like, the clearance aisle at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
People are doing it with, like, dumpster dumps of, like, tech at, like, different retailers. You literally can go through their dumpster, and there's a lot of times that if a product does not sell, and we're talking about computers here, just as a side note, there are times when if inventory doesn't sell, the retailer just dumps it literally into the dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not worth shipping back. It may be perfectly good product, it may be in perfectly good use, but no one's going to buy it and it's taking up shelf space. You've already reduced it as much as you can reduce it. There's no one's buying it.
Right. And there are many sites, and I use some of them, that tell me when to go buy things. And you look at me like I'm nuts.
No, it's just sometimes I don't know which side I'm getting that from.
Okay.
Am I getting it from some weird random website you've been to, or is it like, the Akashic record was opened and today is the perfect day to buy curtains? Like, what the hell am I dealing with? Like, fuck.
Well, it's kind of like today. So I'm trying a new app, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when I try these apps or use these apps, I use them purely this way. We do our normal shopping. I take it and, like, right now I'm using Ibotta.
Mm-hmm.
Scan the receipt. After we've done our normal shopping, it finds deals. It gives me money for those deals. I didn't have to clip coupons. I didn't have to extreme buy.
Right. Not that we aren't also, like, doing some of those things anyway, but...
Well, we're doing coupons, but I don't have a binder, a 5-inch binder with coupons in it anymore.
I know, but you were loving that like 5-foot receipt from Dollar General where every single thing I bought the other night was discounted.
Yeah, where is that receipt?
And that was just, it's here somewhere. It's probably in my wallet now. But yeah, no. Okay, well that's fine. But anyway, no, I want to hit this comment by Mary is they could part it out. That's exactly what some people are doing as well. Is that the whole is not worth anywhere near as much as the component.
Right.
The problem comes in is that retailers are not rework shops.
Right.
They're not interested. A lot of companies may very well know that the part inside the thing is worth money.
Right.
But it's not worth the amount of money it would take to collect it.
Right.
From all these, decentralized locations, take it back to a central point,
right,
and get the part out. And yeah, to some degree, it could be worth money for recycling. Almost all computer electronics are. And it's actually better for the environment if you recycle instead of throw it in a dumpster. That's a whole different story. Short version, though. Someone has to physically do it.
Right.
Someone has to stand there, open all the brand new boxes, take everything out, part it, recycle it, whatever they're going to do. It's a labor problem. It's not worth the money. Windows licenses are definitely worth money, though that can be a little tricky.
Right.
It works, but I don't know how much longer that's going to work.
Right.
Because those are OEM licenses, and what I'm getting out of Microsoft mentally is they're moving to a situation where they're going to make that a little harder.
Right.
Not that they haven't already, but they're not really. Microsoft has never been happy about you taking an OEM license sold to, say, HP. And the first time it activates is on a non-HP machine. Like, no one's happy about that.
Right.
Microsoft especially, because they know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally, it's so far off the rails, it's a little crazy.
Right.
But no, it can be done. All of these things have value.
Right.
The reality is all of them require some level of labor.
Right.
And that can be great if you're independently wanting to go do this. But if you're talking about this from, like, say, the perspective of Best Buy, Target,
right,
Walmart, you're also talking about a lot of expense and something that is not core to their functional business.
Right.
Like, this would be a whole separate division, and it's piecemeal.
Right.
It's not all happening at once. It's not like you have a steady, never-ending supply that you could build a core business unit around to serve that function. The reality is it may be a one-off project, and it's functionally easier, makes more sense if it were actually just not dumped into a dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
But if you literally, as a retailer, had a company to call and just say, hey, I got a stack, like, I've got a pallet of computers, you're welcome to. I don't want to see them go into a dumpster in a landfill and pollute the environment and go to waste.
Right.
If you can use anything out of them, come get them and do what you want.
Right.
But then in turn, this also does create a problem. It's just a much smaller problem.
Right.
Which is, and to kind of go back to what Mary was pointing towards, or what we've been kind of talking about with the pollution aspect, is it may turn into a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we would be horribly offended if Walmart collected thousands of computers. Let's just say they're all laptops, just for the sake of this argument. Collected thousands of laptops, or as an individual store, one by one, thousands of stores, thousands of laptops, all going into dumpsters, all going to different landfills. Or if they pulled them up to the mothership to one big giant warehouse and all of them went into one dumpster with the additional cost of getting them to that warehouse.
Right.
Fundamentally, we have a problem because even if you go in and part them out, you still have the unwanted components.
Right.
And what portion of those unwanted components are going to still contain a smaller amount of pollutants that are still going to go into a landfill?
Right.
Like it becomes 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Because fundamentally what we need, if we're going to look at this long term, is both the ability for companies to quit putting shit in a dumpster that shouldn't be in a dumpster.
Right.
To push that out to other companies to pick up and do with as they will. But in that do with as they will, have a requirement to properly dispose.
Right.
And that's where sometimes it becomes a little wonky, is you find the same problem exists. Is, yeah, you can pop open all these computers and pull out the RAM, which is worth way more money. And going back to this laptop example, like the memory or the solid state drives, the SSDs, may have a high value.
Right.
Compared to even the price of the computer new.
Right.
You may be able to go sell these and make a big profit, especially when you're considering it's free. But then you have to start eating into that profit if you properly dispose.
Right.
Like, let me tell you a secret as an IT guy. Please don't just give me old shit.
Right.
I don't accept it anymore. I don't want it anymore. And this is the problem. Is I have to, at some point, somehow, even if I part all this out, I have to make a dump run.
Right.
And this is not the regular stuff you get to put in a trash bag and throw into a pit.
No.
At least I should not, professionally, ethically, morally, you name it, put it in a trash bag. Put it in a trash bag and throw it in the pit.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go through hazardous waste because that's what it is. It has to be e-cycled. That costs money.
Right.
So, one, it means the house gets junked up with a bunch of crap. Then we have to make one big trip. Then we have to pay. I don't want your old CRT monitor. Love you, mean it. I don't want it. Like, get that crap away from me.
Well, and first of all, Goodwill will take that. They actually recycle it through Dell. Dell pays for the recycling, and they actually use it to make new computers. No, you are not supposed to be throwing batteries away in the trash. They need to be returned to an electronics store. Staples will happily take your batteries.
Mm-hmm. But how many people go ahead and do it?
Right.
Yeah, and... Well, but Mary, here's the thing. Donating laptops to a nonprofit is a green option, and it is. But they often run into the same problem.
Right.
Is that the same reason that laptop wouldn't sell? It kind of goes into that category of why you shouldn't donate. Like, everyone has that relative. There's always, like, they don't throw clothes out, but they always donate them. 10 years after they bought them, when they've got like stains and rips and tears, and they all say the same thing is, well, if you don't have anything to wear, it beats nothing. There's this concept that occurs with computers and electronics and laptops and tablets and desktops and whatever, is it beats nothing, and no, it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes it's just not usable anymore.
Right.
If I were hard pressed in an end of world apocalypse, yeah, it'd be better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we're not even talking like, yeah, a Chromebook versus an Intel i7. A Chromebook has a fair amount of value, and for many nonprofits would be very valuable. However, However, if that's not something that nonprofit necessarily can do anything with, like if they're trying to run a bunch of, like you have to be careful, is what I'm saying. Is what is the value of this computer to that nonprofit?
Right.
What is its exact value to that nonprofit? Otherwise, you're just handing a bunch of crap to a place that can't use it. And they're going to smile and nod and thank you for your charitable giving and the spirit with which it was given.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to, in turn, go spend money to take it to the dump. Or they have to figure out who they can pass it on to.
Right.
And that's time away from core operations. That's money away from core operations.
Right.
Now, doesn't mean it won't sometimes work out. If you give a pallet of Chromebooks to a nonprofit that can't use them, and they in turn swap that with someone else with another nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
for a bunch of stuff that they can use, or they have to do a few layers of that, yeah, it can work out. But again, at that point, just write a check.
Right.
Like, if you're like, ask what the nonprofit needs, and don't stick them with stuff that they can't use.
Right.
Or at least can't directly use or can't directly turn into something they can use.
Right.
Because that all relies on the people running that nonprofit if they're going to effectively do what I would call a hustle, which is you're going to take something you can't use, but someone can, and you're going to work your connections network to find someone who can, and then do one or more trades to get that, to make that conversion. That requires someone who has the time, effort, energy, skill, and ability and desire to do that.
Right.
Not every person working in a nonprofit does. That's just honesty right there. Is for other nonprofits, it's here's your pile of garbage, is what you might as well brought them.
Right.
Here's your pile of garbage. Please thank me for it.
Right. But here's the other thing. There are organizations like the White House. I believe it's called White Hats of West Virginia or Red Hats of West Virginia. That do take used computers, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah. And Brenda points out so many stained, smelly, etc. clothes get donated to nonprofits. I used to volunteer for one. Luckily, a company would take them for pennies on the pound for rags. Most don't, and they have to pay for trash dumpsters like everyone else. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Ben points out those computers that don't sell or aren't very old could benefit school kids specifically or especially low income.
Right.
Again, it can.
Right.
But it also has to fall into the category of but meets minimum requirements for them to do whatever.
Right.
Because not every computer that you could give a kid, even if it isn't that old, even if they're not that bad, will necessarily help that kid at all.
Right.
Like, it's like you can get into some different situations there, especially when you're dealing with low income. Cramden in North Carolina, and when I say I briefly, and I mean like very little did I do with them, but I love the nonprofit. They would refurbish computers. They specifically loved companies that would call them with pallets of computers from their business and say, hi, come pick up this pallet of computers. Hospitals, whatever, big giant companies send them tons of computers. They would refurbish them as best they could, but even within that, there were classes of computers. There's just nothing we can do with that.
Right.
There's nothing anyone can do with that.
Right.
Because technology has so far exceeded it. But my whole point was, even if you go to give a kid a computer and you're dealing especially with low income kids, you have other considerations there.
Mm-hmm.
And especially now more than ever, Do they have internet access? Are they in a home in which this computer will not be traded for food, drugs, or anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Are they in a home that can afford the additional demand of energy necessary to operate this computer? Because these sound like little things, and they are.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about someone who's low income, these are things that can cause parents to absolutely want to beat the hell out of their child.
Mm-hmm.
Because their income situation is so dire
Mm-hmm.
that literally running that computer may make the difference between paying or not paying the electric bill.
Right.
Getting further behind and further behind on their finances, or may for that child turn into, well, you get to eat X number of times per day because we don't have money because of that power bill
Mm-hmm.
to buy you food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want Fruit Loops, turn off the computer.
Right.
As stupid as that sounds, and it is, it's horrible, it can happen.
Right.
So sometimes you got to be really careful with that. Is not every computer is a benefit. Sometimes it just turns into a toy at best. Sometimes it's just crap in a closet.
Right.
And I hate that. I hate that. I really, really, really hate that. But for some people, it just doesn't have the because of their life situation, it can't be allowed to have the value it could have.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are more immediate pressing concerns and problems within that environment that override long-term planning. This is all about daily survival, hourly survival, and can create a lot of friction in a household.
Oh, yeah. And, and I remember having that argument over getting the computer the first time. My first computer, I had an argument with that because it was going to raise the power up.
Mm-hmm. And they did. And then there was tying up the phone lines. That pissed off numerous parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, days of dial-up.
Yay.
Well, and older computers, it was a significant drain on power.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the upside, is this is all getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But you realize you do have to be very realistic and very understanding of the problems of low-income households.
Right.
Is that we are often talking about dollars and pennies creating hellacious problems.
Mm-hmm.
When people say day late and a dollar short, there are literally households that are operating at that.
Right.
That they're encountering problems and issues and falling behind in what starts as a matter of like dollars and cents,
Mm-hmm.
little dollars and cents.
Right.
The $5 extra you couldn't pay on the power bill that now means you had a balance, so you get a late fee. So then the next month's power bill is both higher
Mm-hmm.
and has that additional money you didn't pay plus a penalty. And when you repeat this and it snowballs,
Mm-hmm.
you can get to a point that someone's so far behind,
Mm-hmm.
and what looks like they are totally incompetent all roots back to our horrible system of penalizing people for poverty, coupled with being a day late and a dollar short.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to swipe to our last story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you can take this one coming out of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. All right, so, and this one, part of me finds it super tragic and horrible. Part of me finds it slightly ironic and funny, and I know I shouldn't laugh. I know all the reasons it's wrong to laugh. But San Francisco police officer dies of COVID while on leave for failing to meet vaccination requirement. Yeah. So Officer Jack Nice missed the city's November 1st deadline to submit his coronavirus vaccination record and was placed on a month of paid administrative leave. During that month of leave, because remember, this is November 1st deadline, and this story is from the 11th.
So, yeah,
10 days later, he had become ill with COVID-19 and died of complications on Saturday. So less than 10 days later.
Right.
It's a very sad story.
Yeah.
On one hand. On the other hand, it's like you just can't make this shit up.
Nah.
Like, do you need any more clear, like, this is why there's a requirement? Like, you know, like you're fighting the wrong battle?
Right.
Like, you really... But, yeah. But it's also a story of a lot of people tiptoeing around the bigger story and trying to honor his memory, which I'm not saying shouldn't be honored, but also struggling to not blame him for his own circumstance.
Right.
Because this is also coming as this is happening all across the country.
Right.
That police departments, especially police unions, are telling officers to just not. Yeah.
Which I think there's a bad on the union side. I normally back unions. I'm a union. Used to be a union rep. Used to work for SOU 1199, who has made it a requirement to get your vaccination.
Well, and again, part of me wants to sit here and say I totally understand it. And I get why so many are fighting against being forced.
Right.
I like that level of the argument. I totally follow, understand. I got you. I'm there. Then I'm going one layer down and going, but why don't you want to?
Right.
Like, why are you making this decision and calling that into question in the first place?
Well, and I think because, and this is something that one of the nurses that I follow, who is no longer a nurse, she is now a research assistant. She left the bedside because of COVID. And a lot of nurses are leaving the bedside, pointed out, we are already required to get so many vaccinations as nurses before you can become a nurse. What's the difference? What's the difference?
Yeah. Well, and it just kills me.
Right.
That it's like, do you need any more evidence towards why you should get a vaccination?
Right.
But then at the same time, I can fully understand. And I can even be sympathetic towards. You don't want to be forced to do this. And there are legal reasons why that should not occur.
Right.
But I'm sitting here going, this is all to me. And I guess I just need someone to really explain it to me. This is all a moot point. If you get the first part, which is you should want to be vaccinated, you wouldn't have the secondary problem of being forced to.
Right.
And so I don't understand why you don't want to. I definitely understand why you shouldn't be forced to. But I'm still stuck over here as to why is this even a problem, because...
Right. But here's the thing. This is the severity of this. Let's look at Nice's case alone. He tested positive for the virus late Tuesday. His wife told the Collegian his health depleted rapidly, and by Saturday, she called an ambulance to take him to the hospital. He died later that day, Saturday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 5 days, people. 5 days. And this officer who served for 14 years and before that was in the armed forces, gone. No, 17 years. And then and before that was in the armed forces, gone. 5 days.
Yeah. Well, and again, this all comes into there's two debates that rage in my head. And it does come back to the I don't understand why you don't want to.
Right.
I don't understand. Part of me can, I guess, to some degree, understand perhaps the religious exemption. As in, for religious reasons, you do not want to be vaccinated. Okay, that's a choice you can make. What I still don't understand, and that could be very much a I don't want to vaccinate reason. I still don't get why we're having to force that.
Okay.
As in, unfortunately, because of the nature of this isn't cancer. This isn't, this isn't even HIV. In which you can continue to do your job and pose no health threat.
Right. Well, when they start talking religious exemption, I want to know the religion, because I don't know a Wiccan priest one that's backing this exemption. The leader of the Christian religion, the Pope, has told his priests they are not to sign religious exemptions.
Yeah. Well, and my bigger point though, is it doesn't matter. It can be the Church of Wackadoodle. I don't care if that's what you believe, that's your faith, and you truly heartfelt have a sincere religious reason for not wanting to do this. Then that's fine. Don't do it. But why do you think you also get to continue to work in a public capacity?
Right.
Like, where is it working in your head that you get to have your religious exemption for this on a highly communicable disease and keep your job and continue to work with the public?
Right.
And pose a threat to everyone else's health and safety. That's where I have a problem.
Right.
Like, we went through enough shit over people with HIV. Continuing to be nurses, teachers, doctors. And that's not even an easily communicable disease.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
It really isn't. Like, it's not it's not COVID. It's not the flu. You have to do some very specific things that, theoretically speaking, if you're a teacher, a nurse is it's a little more likely, but if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're, any of the police officer, whatever, you have to get into some very weird situations.
Right.
In which transmission could occur.
Now,
and for mostly it all involves needle stick.
Right. And the ones that are claiming religious exemption, however, need to really look at their med cabinets. Here's why. They're using ibuprofen, aspirin, albuterol, Alateen, Tylenol, Pepto-Bismol, Tums, Lipitor, Centor's, Motrin, Maalox, X-Lax.
I don't think there's a medication you can name that shouldn't be violating their religious exemption or their religious belief, if that's where their problem originates.
Here, I couldn't read the rest of them. I'm posting them to you.
Okay. So, okay. acetaminophen, albuterol, aspirin, ibuprofen, Tylenol, Pepto-Bismol, Tums, Lipitor, Synacot, Motrin, Malox, X-Lax, Benadryl, Sudafed, Preparation H, Claritin, Prilosec, and Zoloft.
Yeah.
But I'm still saying, I don't think there's any medication,
Right.
that could really, you could name, if a simple vaccination is a problem. And that's fine. I think you have a right to be that person. It can be the Church of Wackadoodle and you practice the religion of crazy. I don't care.
Yeah.
I think you have a right to do that. And I think you have a right not to have a vaccination. My problem becomes, but then you have to be willing to understand that you don't get to have this whole cake and eat it too. Like, you can have that right, but your rights stop at the edge of someone else. And this is where the problem is with COVID-19, is your choice and your right to not have a vaccination precludes you from being able to work in public.
Right.
And be in public around other people without being at risk of getting this virus and transmitting it to others. That's where I have problems with this. I'm fine. You don't want to take the vaccination, don't take the vaccination, religious exemption or not. I don't give a shit. That's where I'm at anymore. I don't give a shit. Stop fucking it up for the rest of us. Stop thinking you're entitled to, one, make that decision, and still get to go off and do whatever the fuck you want.
Right.
Like, you can't have both.
Right.
You're not able to have both. Because what you fundamentally do with that is fuck someone else up. You fuck someone else's rights up with that.
Right.
Like, again, I'm at the point, I don't care. I think it's stupid. I don't understand it. Whatever. That you don't want this vaccination, that's fine. Whatever. You have that right to do whatever you want. But don't think you get to go fuck it up for everyone else.
Right.
Hi, read the case of Typhoid Mary if you need further clarification of the concept.
Right. And that's been my whole thing, is why are they not using those laws that were designed and built over one person?
It kills me. It kills me. But yeah. I just don't get how people cannot follow that concept. It almost sounds like if this officer had, knowing he was not going to do this, had gone ahead and just resigned, he'd probably still be alive. He wouldn't be employed, but he'd be alive. It sounds like he tried to push this too far.
Well, he pushed the buck. He did not make a quality of health decision. And this is what police, firemen, every business around is making the decision. Okay? We didn't have this much problem out of typhoid. They used to go through, if you had typhoid, they painted a white mark on your house and locked the door and moved on.
And again, I don't understand how people have a problem understanding. I first have a problem with, I don't understand, and I will not understand why you don't want the vaccination. Now, I do understand there are people that there can be situations where you just cannot have the vaccination.
Right.
Like, your health is compromised in such a way that you cannot have this vaccination. I get that. I can understand that. That goes in and computes. I can even understand that you have made a choice and do not want this vaccination. Where I fundamentally have a problem is that next step. When you think you also are entitled to force that decision on everyone else.
Right.
And create a problem for everyone else.
Right.
And no, I can't understand that. Where does that compute in your head? How does that work? Why does that work for you?
Right.
Like like, yeah, I can be angry that people aren't getting the vaccination. I can be angry, but again, it's their choice.
Right.
I think it's a choice to die. I do. I think it outright says I can't take in information and process it very well about that this is a legitimate disease, that this legitimately kills people, that you really don't want this because it may very well kill you. Or very easily can. And no, we don't know the long-term risks of having this because it just started. We're not going to know for another 8 years at this point. What would be considered a long-term study of what happens when you get this.
Right.
And then we're still going to be another year or two, or perhaps more, for all the variants of this disease.
Right.
Okay, fine. But those are risks you can take. Those are decisions you can make. I don't agree with them. I think they're stupid decisions, but okay, fine, whatever. You made the decision. I just can't get to the next step. That's where I just keep getting lost in it. Is how does someone get to the next step where they turn up and say, well, I want these two mutually incompatible things.
Right.
And it's like, but you can't have that.
And see, as a nurse, now I know we're talking about police officer, but as a nurse, as a former nurse, I think the worst feeling that I could ever have is knowing that I killed one of my patients because of my stupidity.
Yeah. Well, and knowingly preventable stupidity.
Right.
Like, as in, you already know.
Like,
I'm sorry, anyone this many years into COVID, because we're now up to like 2.
3.
Well, but this far in, how do you, like, you can't even make the claim, I didn't know. No, you knew. You knew what the risks were. You were told what the risks were repeatedly, everywhere you went.
Right.
Okay, so you can't even claim, like, I didn't know it could happen. You knew it could happen.
Right.
Okay, so then it's a thing you know can happen. It's a thing you know you're at high risk for because you are unvaccinated, because you aren't listening. And you're still continuing to be around others in public places. And you especially seem to love large groups of people that agree with you, which are a high-risk category.
Right. And for those that are going, oh, but it's a new type of vaccine. Yeah, 1961 is when they discovered mRNA.
Yeah. Okay, and I think Ben brings up an amazing point. How do you feel about theory of some people are actually immune? I'll take that. I'll take that one.
Go for it.
I'm sure there are. We have no way to know yet who those people are.
Right.
It took us how many years into HIV before we even began to think there might be a group of people that just can't get this shit.
Right.
Or have at least a very or a lowered likelihood of getting HIV. Those people exist. I think, what is it, only within the last couple of years?
Yeah.
We've gotten to the point that we can actually, and even then, it's still like squeamishly, say that you're one of those people. We can tell you what the characteristics are. We can tell you, who basically would be less likely. But even then, because it's HIV, because of the long-term effects of HIV, no one's using that like a get out of AIDS free card. Like, you're not going to find a doctor that's going to want to tell you that.
Right.
Because it's still questionable.
Right.
We can tell you that it seems a near impossibility for this group of people with this marker to get HIV.
Mm-hmm.
Or it seems to take an ungodly amount of opportunity.
Right.
Like you have to bathe in it before your body says, "Oh, okay, I'm getting sick now." So with COVID-19, I'm sure there is a group of people somewhere on this planet that are immune.
Right.
I'm sure there's another group that are going to develop immunity.
Right.
I'm sure of that. I don't have a single problem saying that's going to happen and that's a thing.
Right.
My problem is that's like being the guy with the lightning rod who goes walking in a rainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know
Right.
that you're that one? Because inevitably there's this thing in it's a confidence bias that everyone will believe they're the one. Like, if only 1 in 10 people survive a certain type of cancer, everyone believes they're the 1 in 10.
Right. And
Totally
that's the
forgetting
hard part that people have yet to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Is like this carrier discovered over 60 years ago has been the carrier they've been working at for the HIV drug. They haven't had the money to produce it. They've now produced it can work.
Mm-hmm.
The carrier works. They're now starting the testing on it. They're now starting the testing for the one that was only theological MRE for the cancer vaccine.
It has wonderful benefits.
Right.
Like, it potentially. But then you also have to ask the question, what happens if that HIV vaccination
mm-hmm.
is only as effective as COVID-19 has been, and we're up to 2 shots and a booster,
mm-hmm.
and we still don't know, is this going to be annual? Is this going to be every couple of years? Is this going to be, like, what is this going to turn into? Is this something that, there's an adult... Like, we're programmed as human beings at this point in our life, at least, and I'm speaking for people in their 30s. Some of y'all younger folks, y'all are used to this, that you've been hit with HPV vaccination. There's other things coming along.
Right.
People 30 and over, I will almost declaratively say, got used to this idea that you turn 18 roughly somewhere by 21, you've had all the vaccinations you ever need.
Mm-hmm.
We just got hit with the idea of a pneumonia vaccination.
Right.
And that's just fallen into our age group. A shingles vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
And HPV has just now started to hit our age group. There was this point in which you turned 18 and you were pretty much done.
Right.
Don't travel outside of the country to certain areas where certain things you've never been, vaccinated against.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we were supposed to have had to worry about was a fucking tetanus shot every decade.
Right.
That's where we were.
Right.
And then we're adding to this, and it's evolving. And okay, well, yeah, we also got to get a flu shot. Okay, these things keep becoming additive.
Right.
And yeah, it's starting to really justify the annual doctor's appointment, if nothing else.
Yes.
But
I want you to take a moment.
Mm-hmm.
A world without cancer.
Mm-hmm.
A world without HIV. Those are shots you get as children, like chicken pox.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing world to look at.
Yeah.
I'm also slightly horrified.
Uh-huh.
As scary as that sounds, the reason I'm horrified, and I'm not saying curing cancer and curing or ridding the world of cancer, ridding the world of HIV is like a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have gone through such an explosion in healthcare, longevity, and the things we can treat
Mm-hmm.
that used to kill people are now no worse in theory than a paper cut.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no big deal. Like, here's a pill, take it for a few days, maybe a month, you're healed. I keep worrying about what's next.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hard for me to accept a world that does not have HIV, does not have cancer, without immediately jumping to, oh God, what comes after?
Right.
In terms of what's the next god awful, world crippling disease
Mm-hmm.
that we have no clue how to fight, how to treat, how to do anything with, that becomes a common killer.
Right.
And how bad's it going to be? What's it going to look like? How horrible, is that going to be? That we entered a world in which, looking for the cure for cancer, I specifically entered a world that you didn't,
Right.
which is one in which finding a cure for HIV was already a thing.
Right.
And that, we're on the verge of that. And I can't help but transport myself back to other generations in which, one, they were also looking for a cure for cancer because cancer goes back a good long ways, but to where, like my mom, well, my parents, either one of them, had to have been horrified by the idea of HIV.
Mm-hmm.
Just when this occurred, it hit the news, and there's this new horrible killer, and oh, thank God, it's only gay men. I'm protected. Because I'm not one. Like in their lifetime, they had one added. We're about to have two removed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but jump and
Right.
go, oh God, what comes after this?
Right.
We still have Black Plague.
Well, it depends on. I'm gonna say it, and people are gonna think I'm cuckoo, but it depends on how much the ice cap melts, on what the next. Because see, COVID, I really believe came from the melting of the mountains. Like, it was a disease that hit the earth before. It has been seen in other animals. What's the next thing underneath the ice cap?
It's a fair and debatable topic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is. I don't know that we may not for decades have any answers on that one.
Right.
But it's a debatable topic. Is even if that's not where COVID came from, we do run a risk of melting ice caps.
Mm-hmm.
And, germs are resilient little fuckers. Germs, bacteria, fungi, seeds.
Right.
Life is resilient.
Mm-hmm.
The question then becomes, do we potentially, it's not what's new, it's just what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And it's old, very, very, very old.
Mm-hmm.
And you may still again run into people that are immune.
Right.
They are ancestrally from an area that was heavily hit.
Mm-hmm.
And we may have the benefits of, a millennia or more of inherited immunodefense.
Mm-hmm. Well,
weak, but
scientists for
inherited.
ages have tried to figure out what killed out all of the prehistoric man.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and in theory,
Mm-hmm.
vague theories at that, all of this, it may not be what kills us. It may be what turns us green.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the effects could end up being insane.
Right.
It may not kill us, but it may totally change the look of the world.
Right.
Like, can you imagine if everyone were a shade of green? Like, how long till racism dies in a world in which everyone is a shade of green? Just think about that one for a second. Like, if the entire world population spanned from like pastel green to emerald,
Mm-hmm.
that's your entire world population. I wonder how fast racism could last, or how quickly racism could die when you really just can't tell anymore.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think that would be a bad one. Like if we had some horrible disease that functionally we could treat, but it's going to turn everyone green.
Right.
I don't think that'd be bad.
No.
I don't think that'd be bad.
No.
Mary likes my just suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it may not all be horrific, but there's a lot of opportunity there.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunity that will be inherit. We will inherit immunity.
Mm-hmm.
There's, that's very possible. Because I still don't think, have we identified everything we inherit immunity for or can?
No.
I don't think we have.
No.
I think there are
drinking the
some.
colloidal silver water.
Yeah, you don't want to be blue.
Yeah. There, literally, if you drink colloidal silver water, you will turn blue.
Yeah, and then you just end up having to deal with Gargamel over here, and it's all bad.
Yeah. Is that a new nickname for me?
In this situation, yes.
Okay.
You get to be Gargamel. If he turns blue, you get to be Gargamel.
Okay.
Yep, that's how that works. But yeah, there are many things that can reanimate after freezing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I think generationally, wouldn't it be a hell of something if we all did turn like, manic panic hair dye colors? That would be phenomenal. Like, I just think in a generation that is just like, we've been dyeing our hair for years, wouldn't you love for it to be permanent? It just also affects the rest of you.
Yeah.
Like, you never have to dye it blue again. You never have to dye your hair green again. It's already there.
Uh-huh.
But yes. Oh, manic panic.
And needs to figure out how to seal their hair color better.
Yeah, they do. They've always needed to. Yep. But no, I mean, these are things I randomly think about. I don't think it'll all be good. No. I don't think it'll all be bad.
Right.
I think there is a potential that, like, it could just be weird.
Yeah.
There's so much potential there. Right. And there's a potential nothing happens.
Right.
That again, inherited immunity happens. And we're talking about, a few people get sick. Right. And I'm talking about a few thousand.
Right.
Because somehow they lack that inherited immunity.
Right.
Which is still horrible. I'm never saying a few thousand dead people is a good thing. I'm just saying, comparatively to a world health pandemic, that one's a little more digestible. Dr. Seuss addressed this. It's not good. All right. We are still in the process of growth. And it's kind of crazy to think what, like, a few hundred years humans could look like.
Well, let's look at the past 100 years, and this was brought up earlier in a YouTube video, and I was
Mhm.
kind of shocked and horrified. The size of humans has increased over the last 50 years, since
Mhm.
1950. Not only that, but the plate has increased 50%. The size of what we're eating has increased 50%. That's
Well, yeah,
scary.
but you also have to look at one. A lot of that was the two are interlinked.
Yeah.
Is scarcity of food,
Mm-hmm.
um, coupled with well, one would generate malnourishment,
Mm-hmm.
but two, you also have improving healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually have people over, making it to adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
with most of their teeth,
Mm-hmm.
um, which increases nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
You also have a reduction in childhood illness, so you have people even making it uh, to adulthood, period.
Right.
But they're doing so healthier,
Mm-hmm.
not suffering the ill effects of those childhood diseases.
Right.
That you, I mean, where do you count that? Is it that we're evolving bigger, or are we actually just being allowed to reach human potential?
I think we're starting to reach human potential.
Yeah,
Finally.
because I mean, well, yeah, because if you think about it, there were rich throughout all this have been an aristocracy
Mm-hmm.
that has also one gotten slightly better in all those categories, but fundamentally has always been exceeding in those categories.
Mm-hmm.
That they had the bountifulness of food, they had the bountifulness of nutrition from that food.
Mm-hmm.
They had, a greater insulation from childhood diseases,
Right.
through, the benefits of not being in poverty and not experiencing impoverished conditions
Mm-hmm.
over that last 50, 100, 200, whatever years.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the intermarrying of like people.
Mm-hmm.
So genetically, you're getting an advantage and a boost every single time that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one? These were selected traits that carried into adulthood or carried through generations. But you have an almost concentrating effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one could make the argument the rich really are better than us if
Right.
you're talking about multi-generational wealth.
Right.
And that's horrible to say. Like, my brain hurts saying it, but realistically,
Uh-huh.
if you're talking about it that way, um, and trait selection, then theoretically,
Mm-hmm.
the rich could be better than us.
Right.
And that's just purely on nutrition and nutrition, health, and um, wealth to buy food, influencing that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It can also go to the other way if you have a lot of intermarrying cousins, but that's a different story.
That's even crazier.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we'll end there tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It's been a lot of conversations. There's a lot of new things that I'm working on and new things I'm testing out. Ibotta being one of them. Look for me to talk about it later and tell you how good it is or how bad it is. I tried yoga for the first time this morning. Trying a new diet plan. We're going to see how that works out.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow at 10:35 p.m. I would have been on Keen for 15 years.
Yay!
Yeah. So
Very
that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
There we go. Well, and of course, we want to thank our Patreon supporters. We really appreciate you guys supporting us through Patreon. We love our baristas. We'd like to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G. I'm going to have to wait for it to come back around every
Bryant,
time.
Kathy.
Oh, yeah, let me just wait for it to come back around.
Okay, we're up to Kathy.
Okay, well, hold on. I'll just start over.
Okay.
Like, I will. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I could catch it fast enough and get the words out. So we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Gist, Shannon C, Shannon D, the ever wonderful Lady Gwendolyn, and Charles Shaw. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and become one of our lovely baristas, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
All right, guys, we will be back Tuesday. I believe I have a guest. If not, I believe we're discussing the Mandela effect.
Ooh!
Yes. And who knows, there might be some other videos coming out and different things coming out as we move along with this. But until then, have an amazing night, guys. A great weekend. Wear your mask if you need to. Wash your hands. And wash your butt. Apparently, there's a lot of straight men that don't take showers. That's cool.
What?
Bye, y'all.
All right. Bye.
Before the storm, you know what's coming, so be warned. You can't stop me now.